surprising argument I often hear from the anti-creationists is that the majority of scientists believe the theory of evolution. They are implying, of course, that if the majority of scientists believe it, it must be true, and science. And anyone questioning evolution must then be anti-science. That's right, because as we all know, that's how science works. They vote on it.
We are excited for the electronic voting system the engineering folks put together for us to expedite the voting process during our meetings. Now, first on the agenda is Einstein's theory of relativity. Okay, all those in favor, lock in your yay votes. Okay, now all of those opposed, lock in your nay votes. All right, let the record show that Einstein's theory of relativity has been favored by the majority vote of 379 to 7, and therefore the theory is true and scientific. Now, next on the agenda, whether or not Dr. Winslow's mother is fat.
The consensus argument isn't just illogical, it's downright dangerous. What the majority believes now can change. Ask any scientists, and they will tell you that all of their theories, everything we allegedly know right now, can be tossed in the garbage at any moment with new discoveries. So if the majority believes one thing now, which later turns out to be disbelieved by the majority, which majority is correct?
Okay, last year we voted that the polarization of the cosmic background radiation measured by the BICEP 2 telescope was proof of the Big Bang, and thus the majority voted it was true and science. Now it appears that the polarization was caused by space dust. All in favor of the polarization being caused by space dust, lock in your yay votes. And all of those who still think the polarization was caused by the Big Bang, lock in your nay votes. Let the record show that the theory that polarization was caused by space dust is now true in science. Even though last year we said it was true in science that it was caused by the Big Bang as determined by the majority vote. Well, maybe what's true will be different again next year, eh?
For example, when it comes to the creation-evolution debate, the debate actually started with Noah's flood and the age of the Earth. Now, the scientific consensus about the geology of Earth was one of catastrophe, that it was all the result of Noah's flood. Along comes Charles Lyell, who popularized uniformitarianism. The idea that the rock layers of Earth were the result of millions and millions of years of slow and gradual erosion and deposition. Now, this was the scientific consensus for over a century. However, the scientific consensus today is actualism, a strange combination of catastrophism and uniformitarianism. The idea that catastrophes have shaped and sculpted the Earth over millions of years. Each paradigm was, at one time, the scientific consensus. So were the catastrophists not scientists? What about the scientists over more than a century who believed, and some still believe, in uniformitarianism? Are they no longer scientists because they doubt actualism? In 1912, the Piltdown skull was found in a gravel pit in Piltdown, England. The combination of ape and human features convinced scientists it was a crucial fossil link between ape and man. 42 years later, it was discovered that it was a hoax. Someone had taken an orangutan jawbone, combined it with the cranium of a human, stained the bones and filed down the teeth in order to make it look like a half-ape, half-human ancestor. Everybody was duped. The scientific majority was dead wrong. Now bring this up with the elitists who argue consensus science, and they then praise the embarrassing incident as an excellent example of how science is self-correcting. In the words of a very famous guy, you hypocrites! By claiming that science is self-correcting, you are admitting that science can be wrong. Though let's be clear, science is neither right nor wrong. It is the scientists who are either right or wrong. And obviously you would be referring to the majority of scientists being self-correcting. and therefore you are admitting that the scientific consensus could be dead wrong. I could provide numerous examples of times when the scientific consensus was dead wrong, like Louis Pasteur and spontaneous generation, or Antonio Snyder Pellegrini and Alfred Wegener and continental drift, or Andre Geim's Nobel-winning discovery of two-dimensional material. But I'm trying to keep this video short. The consequences of clinging to scientific consensus are horrific. In 1800s, puerperal fever killed 1 in 6 women after childbirth. 1 in 6. For a woman to have a baby, she might as well have put a gun to her head, played Russian roulette. The odds were just as good, and the death would have been less painful. In 1795, Scotsman Alexander Gordon discovered that the fever was an infectious process, transmitted predominantly by those assisting in childbirth, midwives, and even Gordon himself, acting as an obstetrician. The scientific consensus was that he was wrong, and those scientists persecuted him for his allegedly atrocious science. In 1849, Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis, working at the Vienna General Hospital's maternity clinic, also concluded that puerperal fever was a contagion spread by the workers. He introduced a chlorine wash for the workers and all but eliminated the fever from the ward. But consensus science would not accept this conclusion, and the consensus scientists ridiculed Semmelweis, said he was a Jew, got him fired, and he died ostracized in a mental institution. It wasn't until the early 1900s that scientific consensus finally caught up to the truth about puerperal fever. That's right, 125 years. These brilliant men used good science, good evidence, which the scientific consensus ignored. How many women died because of the arrogance of consensus science? Consensus science is not truth. Let us not forget the Nazi scientists who certainly had a consensus based upon alleged research that invalids and Jews in particular were genetically and racially unfit. The consensus was used to encourage and justify euthanasia and eugenics, the killing of countless numbers of persons they deemed unfit. A must-read on the subject of scientific consensus is Michael Crichton's scathing and highly entertaining lecture given at Caltech in January of 2003, entitled Aliens Cause Global Warming. He pulled no punches when he justifiably said, "I regard consensus science as an extremely pernicious development that ought to be stopped cold in its tracks. Historically, the claim of consensus has been the first refuge of scoundrels. It is a way to avoid debate by claiming that the matter is already settled. In science, consensus is irrelevant. What is relevant is reproducible results. The greatest scientists in history are great precisely because they broke with the consensus. There is no such thing as consensus science. If it's consensus, it isn't science. If it's science, it isn't consensus. Period." Lastly, who is it, pray tell, that determined that the consensus among scientists constitutes scientific truth? Oh, that's right, we vote on it.
Next on the agenda, this should be a fast vote. Is scientific truth determined by a consensus opinion among scientists? Why are we even voting on this? I don't think we need to, but let's make it official. All in favor, lock in your yay votes. And that's everybody in attendance. So, let the record show it has been determined by the majority of scientists that the majority of scientists determine what is truth and science.
Crichton and many other evolutionists used very strong words when it came to consensus science. If after watching this video you still want to use the consensus argument, then basically, according to them, what you're saying to the world is, "Hello, I'm an elitist, censoring, anti-science, propagandizing, hypocritical, cowardly scoundrel with a political agenda. And I'm a Nazi." You can see why the evolutionists would use such sharp words. Life and death literally hang